But this movie starts off with a vulnerable, damaged, hurt Superman. He's experienced his first loss ever, as the opening messages tell us, and this is not a spoiler because this is literally the first trailer we got. It's a great way to start. We're not seeing the indestructible Superman, we're seeing one that is more like us, one that can be hurt, and that's exactly the tone that we need to have for this movie. Welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking Superman, starring David Corenswet as Superman, adapted from the comics created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and written and directed by James Gunn. Now, if you're enjoying these rankings, or you just like the idea of getting a review of an action movie based on it being an action movie, please consider subscribing and/or following, liking, and reviewing. Please put any of your questions, comments, or suggestions into the comments, or email the show at info@therankpodcast.com. And if you super duper like it, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankpodcast. So let's find out how the first entry into the brand new DCU fared, starting with the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So as always, we start the potent notables with the movie's financials. It came out this past weekend, so for its first weekend, it garnered $125 million domestically and $95 million internationally for a worldwide total of $220 million. This is against a budget of $225 million, so it almost hit the budget in the first weekend. With such a strong opening weekend domestically and good word of mouth, this will have no problem crossing the profit line. So the question is, will it cross that $1 billion mark? It's tough to say, because historically Superman doesn't do that well internationally, so it's really going to depend on how good of a hold Superman has over its second weekend. So if it drops like 60%, not a chance. If it drops under 50%, we're definitely hitting $1 billion, so I'll be looking for that. Now, our first non-box office potent notable, Will Reeve has a cameo in this movie. He plays a TV reporter, which is what he actually does in real life. Now, for those of you who don't know, Will Reeve is Christopher Reeve's youngest child. Will was just 3 years old when his dad had that tragic accident that paralyzed him. So from Will Reeve to Nathan Fillion, who plays Green Lantern in the movie, at least the Guy Gardner version of him, Nathan insisted that he sport the same bowl cut as Guy has in the comics. Nathan being in it was great, and I also love that he wore one of the Green Lantern rings to the premiere. If you're like on the fence about seeing Superman and you like Nathan Fillion, seeing him in a blonde bowl cut, that's worth it. Now, the internet has been noticing that practically all James Gunn movies have been largely about parents, and to support that, James Gunn tweeted that the death of his father was an influence on this screenplay. The film's release date was actually his father's birthday as well. David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan were cast together as Clark Kent / Superman and Lois Lane. They were cast based on their auditions separately, but they were also cast based on their on-screen chemistry. So basically, they tested the actors separately, and then they also tested them in pairs to figure out who had the best chemistry. Or as James Gunn put it, quote, "We mixed and matched these different actors and actresses to find out not only who was the best Clark and who was the best Lois, but who was the best Clois." Okay, James. I do think that David was the best Clark, Rachel was the best Lois, but they also had the most chemistry together, end quote. So James Gunn also discussed how Krypto's inclusion was inspired by his own dog, Ozu, who he adopted around the time he began work on the script. Gunn had Ozu 3D scanned and then digitally altered to resemble Krypto. So basically, Krypto is Ozu. To which Gunn has said, quote, "Every time he sees himself come on screen, he tries to murder himself." End quote. So on to the last potent notable here, and it's kind of a long quote that's in here, but I thought it was worth putting in here because it's kind of fun. So James Gunn resisted Superman's red trunks until David Corenswet's pitch to add them to the costume. James Gunn said, quote, "We were trying on all these different versions and we screen tested with trunks and no trunks. And one of the things David said is that Superman wants kids to not be afraid of him. He's an alien. He's got these incredible powers. He shoots beams out of his eyes. He's incredibly powerful and could be considered scary. He wants people to like him. He wants to be a symbol of hope and positivity. So he dresses like a professional wrestler. He dresses in a way that makes people unafraid of him, that shows that hope and shows that positivity." And that really clicked in for me. I think trying to pretend that Superman's costume doesn't have some frivolity at its base, trying to make it look serious, is silly because he is a superhero. He's the first one, brightly colored, and that's who he is. End quote. Now, what's funny is that I actually read this article before I saw the movie, and it had me on on board for the trunks as well. And it sort of made me retroactively annoyed that Snyder didn't have them. So those are all the potent notables. Let's go to the movie overview. So this superhero movie, like many of the superhero movies nowadays, opted not to bother with an origin story. I think it was a good idea. We all know Superman. Just let him be Superman, and the audience will go, ah, that's Superman. Neat. But this movie starts off with a vulnerable, damaged, hurt Superman. He's experienced his first loss ever, as the opening messages tell us, and this is not a spoiler, because this is literally the first trailer we got. It's a great way to start. We're not seeing the indestructible Superman, we're seeing one that is more like us, one that can be hurt, and that's exactly the tone that we need to have for this movie. So I'm going to give away the rank a little bit here when I say I officially trust James Gunn. I loved the Guardians movies. I wasn't on the bandwagon as much with Suicide Squad, but it was still fun. So I had some reservations going into this. Superman has never been my favorite superhero. I didn't dislike him, I just always liked the X-Men more. And the Tim Burton Batman movies came out when I was a kid, so that meant I liked Batman more as well. Anyway, Gunn crushed it. Gunn shot a bullseye, if you will.
Corny joke and pun.
And I'm now on board for this new DCU. I hope it holds up. Will this movie be for the DCU what the first Iron Man was for the MCU?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I think it has a good opportunity to be just that, actually. So James Gunn didn't just make a Superman movie. He made a movie with heart and subtext and subtlety. He made three-dimensional characters. He gave them purpose and meaning. He made poignant points, like maybe being kind to everyone is the real punk rock. Some people say that there's some allusions to the Israel-Palestine conflict. I won't necessarily opine on that, but I can see why people would think that. But really, what it boils down to is a battle between Lex Luthor and Superman. There are definitely some allusions being made with the methods that Lex uses on Superman. I feel like if someone were to watch this before social media, they'd be like, come on, give me a break. People wouldn't buy this. But then the people who live in this time, us, go, yep, this makes total sense, because social media is the devil, as I post this on social media. The action scenes are all well done. The fighting is epic. The CGI is excellent and plentiful, but not in a Quantum Mania way. We get introduced to some characters that are really fun. Actually, most everybody they put on screen has a charm to them, including the dog. You can tell that James is playing pretty fast and loose with farce sometimes. Like he's teetering on the edge, but he never actually goes over. Sort of like Thor Ragnarok, or in the opposite direction, Thor Love and Thunder. Where the movie truly works is how invested it gets you into the characters. There's an economy in storytelling present. They don't need to give a ton of exposition. They don't tell you, they show you. Unless they really need to tell you. But if they do, there's a character there that needs to be told as well, and it's believable that they'd be there. Also, just as an aside, Lois Lane's license plate said Delaware. So is Metropolis in Delaware? Again, Superman, not my favorite superhero. I didn't read the comics or anything, so maybe that's a dumb question. But I don't know. I just assumed it was supposed to be New York. But so is Gotham, right? So that doesn't really make any sense. Sorry for the digression. Probably my favorite part is the love letter this movie sends to adoptive parents. It's really quite beautiful and made my spouse and I tear up in the theater. You know, the thing you'd expect to do when watching a Superman. Well, you might have an idea of how this movie is going to do at this point, but will it have enough steam to overtake Star Wars, which is currently at the top of the list? Will it make it into the top tier, absolute masterpiece? Let's find out. Let's go to the rank.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the movie based on 10 categories: story, acting, originality, action sequences, film coherence, hero appeal, villain appeal / hatred, supporting characters appeal, the final showdown, and my rank. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. The first category is story, and I gave story a 4.25. So the story is Superman saves the world, right? I mean, done well, that's a good enough story for an action movie, but this one also does real world illusions, and at the heart, it's a story about nurture versus nature and the impact that nurture can have. It's actually quite touching. I will say though, even though that's the heart of the movie, the main story is Lex versus Superman, and that is sort of paint by numbers in a way. Not a bad way, because that dynamic is fun and good, just, you know, nothing special. That's why it's a 4.25, which is a great score rather than 5, which is the best score. So let's go to acting, which I gave a 4.5. Nicholas Hoult is an incredible actor. He really embodies the characters he plays to the point where you forget that you're watching him. I always say that's the sign of a great actor, when you forget that it's the actor playing the role. The two people I most see this with is Daniel Day-Lewis and Meryl Streep. Now, I'm not saying that Hoult is there yet, but I think he has the talent to be at their level. Maybe it's just me, but I'm impressed by it. Anyway, everyone else is really good also. So let's go to originality, which I gave a 2.75. Points for real world illusions and using the modern world's problems effectively. However, it's still Superman and Lex Luthor. It's great, but it's not necessarily original. So let's go to action sequences, which I gave a 5. It's CGI heavy, but still excellent. I thought about going below a 5, but decided I wasn't going to nitpick about the CGI. It's excellent. So let's go to film coherence, which I gave a 4.5. The only reason it's not a 5 is because of some nitpicky stuff. Like there's a moment where people are sitting around watching something happen that they really should just leave, and not in a movie, people would be running away. There's a part that feels a little too convenient for me that involves even Jimmy without giving too much away. Also, our sun is white. It's not yellow. It is white light. That's why we see the spectrum of color that we do. So yeah, they call it yellow several times in this, and my nerdy brain got annoyed by it. But it's not a big. So let's go to hero appeal, which I gave a 5 because it's Superman, So the next category is villain appeal / hatred. And Lex Luthor's a classic villain, right? So will it be a 5? Yeah, it's a 5. And just like it's Superman, it's Lex Luthor. His villainy would have outshined hero appeal, but the story and filmmaking for Superman is so good that they are both excellent. So let's go to supporting characters appeal, which is a 4.75. Everybody is great in this. The only gripe is that sometimes they get a little too caricature-y or slapstick for me, but that's only enough to knock it down by 0.25, so certainly not bad. So now we go to the final showdown, which I gave a 5. I take the final showdown as everything from the final fight that Superman has to his final scene with Lex, and I'm trying not to give anything away. It's all masterfully done. So now we go to the final category, which is my rank, and I gave it a 5. So I went into this movie with high expectations and it exceeded them. There's not much more you can say for a movie than that. I'm going to steal from the text Zach sent me on opening night, and I realize that some of you out there don't maybe remember Zach at this point. I would think you do. It hasn't been that long, but he used to host the show. Anyway, Zach texted me at 11:50 p.m. Friday night of opening night, and what he said is, if I could go back in and watch it again right now, I would. Not much more you can say than that, right? So that puts the total for Superman at 45.75, which puts it in the tier absolute masterpiece. So thanks for listening and or watching. If you'd like to see a list of our action movie rankings, you can do that on our website at therankpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe, review, and comment. And please consider supporting us on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankpodcast, where you get access to all of the archived episodes. Ma salama. Unless they really need to tell you, but if they do, unless they really need to tell you. But if they do, there's a character that, unless they really need to tell you. But if they do.
We're stuck in a repetition, a loop.
I'm going to say that again. Unless they really need to tell you. But if they do, unless they really need to tell you.
Please make us stop.